our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you down on our app at KBLA 1580. Download the app and take us with you anywhere in the world and listen to us in real time, but only by downloading our app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of this program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast of this program and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. You can also watch the live stream of this program now by tapping the KBLA TV icon on our app or by going to our YouTube channel. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today in our second hour as we approach another Thanksgiving celebration and as we continue to pay respect to Native American Heritage Month, a conversation with Cheryl Crazy Bull, President and CEO of the American Indian College Fund, about the pressing issues facing the Native community and the ongoing struggle to increase the visibility and representation of Native people. In our third hour,
show you the world, shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide? I can open your eyes, take you wonder by wonder, over, sideways, and under. On a magic carpet ride, a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no, or where to go, or say we're only dreaming. A whole new world, a dazzling place I never knew. But now from way up here, it's crystal clear that now I'm in a whole new world with you.
Alongside Peebo Bryson, she is the voice on one of the most successful Disney theme songs of all time, A Whole New World. Grammy-winning artist Regina Belle. Regina has, for the first time in her 35-year music career, released a holiday album. It's called My Colorful Christmas, a career conversation with Regina Belle today in Hour 3. But in this first hour, legal expert and leading social critic Paul David Henderson on the ongoing drama inside the U.S. Supreme Court following the extraordinary leak this spring of a draft opinion by the High Court on the pending decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. We have learned of yet another leak, another Supreme Court breach prior to that one. This case involves Justice Samuel Alito, who wrote the opinion. In fact, he wrote the opinion on both of these cases. So let's talk about what information was shared in secret with a handful of conservatives, what they did with that information once it was leaked to them, and what these leaks say about the court's permeability, what they do to the court's credibility, or at least what little credibility remains. I am pleased to welcome the director of the award-winning San Francisco Department of Police Accountability and a friend of this station and this program, Paul David Henderson. Paul, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing quite well, Tavis. How's it going? Good morning.
Good morning to you. I'd complain. If I complained, as I say all the time, I'd be an ingrate. So it's going well. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to be grateful for this day and every day. And I'm always delighted, of course, to be in conversation with you. What I am not grateful for are all of these leaks that keep coming out of the Supreme Court. This article that was written in a story, of course, broken by the New York Times, is a massive issue for me, and I suspect for those of us who watch the court and pay attention to it. It's a significant issue because this is not the first time. It likely won't be the last time, but we're starting to learn a great deal more, again, as I said a moment ago, Paul, about the permeability of this Supreme Court. And that permeability, for me, one can draw a direct line from the permeability to the political nature of the way this stuff is done. Nobody's naive about that. But before I get into the particulars of this story, what do you make of the story that we're finding out, again, that in other instances, documents and information that should not have been leaked was leaked outside of that court?
Listen, it's a big deal, and part of why this is a big deal is because it's such a huge blow to the credibility of the Supreme Court. That is a real problem. If we can't count on the third arm of our political basis and foundation, I think we have some real problems, and this is an indication of some real problems. And it's not lost on me that the leak is coming from intimate relations from one of the members of the Supreme Court, Alioto, and from his wife. And by the way, this is not the first time that we're talking about the wives or the spouses. I said Alito, it's not Alioto. The spouses of members of the Supreme Court. And we know that Clarence Thomas and his wife are having some problems and challenges as it relates to political behaviors as well. So the fact that it's coming from this source in this way is also a real problem. I mean, to me, from my perspective, and just looking at what's going on with this leak, before we even start talking about the basis of the leak and what the subject matter is, the implications of this crack in the foundation, again, though, from one of the most conservative members of the court, there are real two things that I'm concerned about as an implication from these leaks and from the subject matter. One, how these leaks are influencing the political landscape. I don't know that these leaks were not intended to have an effect on what's going on in the nation in other areas. And people would question why, I'm sure, and say, well, the midterms are over now, so what is the value? And while the midterms may be over, choosing the leaders in the House, and both for the House and Senate, is what's going on right now. And having these leaks on these specific issues is going to rally political parties. And I think that's going to have a big influence on how those leaders are going to be chosen. And then the second issue that I think is really important from these leaks that we have to talk about is how, again, we have a clear and valid indication of the Supreme Court moving in a way that is politicized away from majority opinion to reflect political values. And I think that's the core of the problem. It's not that there is a legal analysis that the majority believe is objective. And that's really what the standard is supposed to be with and for the Supreme Court. Instead, what we have are justices who are voting according to political lines. And I think that's a real concern, is that many people are starting to feel that the Supreme Court is now a political entity rather than a judicial entity. Yep. And we've seen so many of behaviors leading up to this, from how folks got to the bench in the first place and the appointment process that we know was twisted in the last administration. And so this is all a culmination of all of that taking place right now. And I think that's what's behind another leak at the Supreme Court. Those are the things that stand out to me.
No, let's talk about those two things in the time we have left. On the B side, the backside of this first hour, we'll talk to Nee Cortely-Corte, the moderator of A More Perfect Union, heard on this station Sundays on the 10s. We'll talk about the politics on the backside. You heard Paul David Henderson making a strong point about how we are now seeing these decisions more and more that are really reflecting a political point of view, not the majority opinion of the American people. So we'll talk politics on the backside of this hour, but we'll spend the next 15 minutes or so talking to Paul David Henderson about the legal issues, the legal ramifications of this. And again, if you've not heard this story, you should familiarize yourself with it. But here we go again, another leak out of the U.S. Supreme Court. And as you heard Paul David Henderson put his finger on quite nicely, another leak apparently from a conservative member of the court, and another issue where the wife, the spouse of a Supreme Court member, is involved in this. First Jenny Thomas, and now the wife of Justice Samuel Alito. Something just ain't right, to quote a great artist. We'll continue our conversation with Paul David Henderson when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Good thing we've got 3 hours.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
What make you? Yeah.
We're
California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
For generations, our families have worked hard to accomplish the dream of owning a home. Not just to have a roof over their heads, but roots beneath their feet. A place to gather and reconnect with loved ones. A home to pass down through the generations. It's your turn now. And Rocket Mortgage is here to help open the doors to home ownership. Rocket is an expert when it comes to buying a home, and we have the tools to help you get there. In this competitive market, a verified approval can give you an edge with sellers. You'll stand out because your finances have been approved, so they'll know you're a serious buyer. So, when it's time to buy that house and make it your dream home, Rocket can. Let us help you get started. Call 888-900-0409 today or visit rocketmortgage.com.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information appraisal and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equalizing lender license in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
All right, Paul, David Henderson. I'm watching my clock. We got about 15 minutes, just under, to unpack for the audience this story. I'll pass the baton to you. You're the legal expert here. So for those who are more curious about what happened, what this leak is all about, take it away, sir.
Sure. So some of the things that are really concerning are not just that these were leaks. And what's breaking now in the news is concern about the leaks, which are both attacking contraceptive rights and religious interpretations of rights in this country. Here's why that matters and how it came out in the way that it did. The challenge has been in the past that we have protected a lot of the rights that we have been hard-fought for in this country. And just as a side note, we've never had any rights in this country that have just come through accretion, just as natural evolution. Mm-hmm. We've always had to fight for the rights that we have in this country. And so when we have challenges like this that come from the court, it's pretty shocking, and it's pretty disappointing, and it's not something that has been done in the past very easily. The courts are loath to approach majority rights, even as an issue, to find ways to overturn things like rights that we've accrued already in the country. So this is not a common thing. The fact that that issue is exacerbated here, not just from the leaks, but in how the leaks were used confidentially over a long period of time from plaintiffs themselves who bring forth the issue are the problem. Mm-hmm. So in this case that we're talking about the leaks, it's the Hobby Lobby Corporation. And Hobby Lobby has been known, and it's their whole point and perspective, that they are a very conservative organization whom are reflective of religious rights. Now, the reason why this is important is because those religious rights are used as a tool to suppress and avoid having legal repercussions for civil rights, and for not just civil rights, but other kinds of rights as well. Meaning there's a back door if you can argue that for religious reasons you don't believe in LGBT rights. For religious reasons, you don't believe in contraceptions. For religious reasons, that you don't support affirmative action or whatever. It doesn't matter what the subject is. I mean, it matters to the rest of the majority and to America, especially for Black and brown communities. But once that tool is affirmed, that if you have a religious belief, you are outside of the law, or you don't have to follow the law in the way that the rest of the country does, I think that's a real problem. And that's what's at the core both of this leak and at the core of how the information from these leaks that have a long history have been used. Because apparently this information was used by Hobby Lobby and its lobbyists to prepare for decisions and to have access to justices in ways that are inappropriate, that further undermine the validity of the court. And the reason that that is a problem and why we're having this conversation right now is because the pipeline of what's on the Supreme Court now just opens the door to many more problems to be reflected in this country that I think are going to affect the majority in ways that are going to be really terrible, not the least of which would be affirmative action. And so part of why we have the concerns goes well beyond just that there is a leak about how justices have indicated that they are ruling, but the concern is regarding this leak, how justices have been influenced specifically by political parties reflecting religious values to challenge and overturn rights that have been accrued in this country, especially the rights that have been supported by the majority over time and that now are being challenged. I hope that explains it. I was just trying to
No. It can be complicated. That's why I wanted to have you on, because you're awfully good at breaking these things down for the rest of us to understand, particularly when they involve complex legal matters. But I think you put your finger on the pulse. Is that what these leaks show us and what these cases show us, as you said quite nicely, is that there is a direct link oftentimes between these lobbyists, between these advocates on the outside in conservative spaces, and the access that they have to these Supreme Court justices that they ought not to have. What this story the New York Times points out is that it shows all these emails that are going back and forth between people inside the court and people outside the court. And it really does
for years.
For years, exactly. It really does start to lay the groundwork. You know, it's that notion of being a conspiracy theorist, right? They will call us conspiracy theorists, but we're really not. I mean, what we're saying we now know to be true, that this stuff has been going on for years now behind our backs, with these lobbyists, with these conservative activists and advocates are in relationship to these Supreme Court justices and influencing the decisions they make. So to your point, what ought to be decisions based upon legal merit or the lack thereof end up really being political decisions. And to pour salt into the wound to make matters worse, now we find out once again that oftentimes the spouses of these Supreme Court justices are the links between the connections, the conduits, if you will, between the folk on the outside, the activists, and the jurists on the inside. So we know the story about Jenny Thomas and the role that she played in January 6th and all the emails between her and Mark Meadows, at the time the chief of staff to Donald Trump. Now we see a story involving the wife of Justice Samuel Alito. What do you make of that, Paul David Henderson?
I mean, that's exactly what the problem has been. And the bigger issue is that these leaks, these emails, these access points that have been targeted to conservative members of the court are a real problem, because it's just as you said, those influences are acting in spite of what the expectation is for the Supreme Court to be evaluating these complex legal issues based on legal authority, not on religious values and not on political values. And if you look at the current situation, you'll see it's elevated even more from what's gone on from the past administration, and how the Supreme Court was manipulated for political reasons to put candidates onto the court that reflect the values of a political party. And so all of this coming together just creates a huge fissure in terms of credibility for the court. And part of the reason why there's such a movement right now for the Take Back the Court movement. Now, this is, one of the boards that I sit on, just in full disclosure. But part of what the movement is for Take Back the Court is a reflection that's being supported across the board from a number of different voices, challenging the Supreme Court's makeup. Go ahead.
Now, let me go to your word manipulated. I know what you meant by this. I'm watching my clock. Got about 4 minutes left here. I know what you meant by your use and your invocation of the word manipulated, but I want to be clear about this. These jurists are not being manipulated. The jurists are not being exploited. They're in a position now for a lifetime to espouse the views they already hold and to advance their political positions. I mean, we see now they are oftentimes in concert. They're working together with these conservative activists outside the court, but they're not being manipulated or exploited. They're really espousing their own political points of view, are they not?
1,000%. I almost rang a bell while you were saying it. When I said manipulated, I'm pointing out the activity externally from these lobbyists and the manipulations externally from political actors who should not be. I think there's really some judgment about how people are acting outside of the court in specifically targeting and trying to influence these members of the court in a way that is clearly inappropriate. Mm-hmm. That's before we start looking internally at the people who received those manipulations, who went so far as to not just give and share information to prepare litigants, prepare the litigants to argue cases and prepare in front of them inappropriately on these legal issues, but have even these folks sitting inside the courtrooms with special privileged seating. The fact that is part of the problem. Yeah. The justices receive the information, and it's difficult to not believe that they didn't just act upon or receive information in a political way from these parties, even though the communications themselves were inappropriate, even though the actions themselves were inappropriate, and absolutely because the information that they were receiving was inappropriate. Yeah. All of that is what we're talking about, and that's why this is such a big story. And it's also why everyone is so concerned about what direction this court is heading, because let's not forget that this is a supermajority in this court that can essentially do anything and is untouchable in terms of how they interpret the law and the decisions that they're making, especially at a time right now when there's such a major fight between a shift in how the political parties are headed and how they're going to represent the rest of the majority of this country.
I got a tight 2 minutes here. I know you got stuff to run to do, and I got to move on to your friend and my friend, Nicola Corte, after News, Traffic, and Sports. So I got 2 minutes very quickly here. Let me ask you, I want to close where I began, Paul David Henderson, and that is, what does this say to you about the permeability and the credibility of the Supreme Court in the years to come?
It's scary. And I would say that's how I would leave you, that I'm scared of what the court is doing and how they're doing it in ways that I've never been in the past with the history of the Supreme Court. We've never been at a time where the court has been manipulated in the way that it has to put on candidates that would be susceptible in this way. And we have not had, and we shouldn't have, candidates that have a political agenda on the court. It undermines the entirety of the process, and it's part of why folks are so concerned, and I'm so concerned about what the majority beliefs even matter anymore if we can't have those opinions that are really important to our everyday lifestyle evaluated in a fair way on the legal issues. I went to law school and became a lawyer because I believe in those arguments, because they should have an outcome that is independent of the political machinations of the people that I'm arguing cases in front of. And I think that's what the country wants to believe and has to believe in order for the Supreme Court to have some credibility. This loss of credibility is going to be a blow to the court for a very long period of time, but I'm also concerned to see what will be the reaction from the Republican and the Democratic Party about these leaks, because this system is, I don't want to say that it's broken, but it's definitely fractured, and we must take action to affirm our rights and continue to fight for the things that matter to us in this country.
I should say very quickly here, and the reason we know all of this is not because some progressive did great research to bring this story to us. That happens sometimes. We know all this because of a conservative named Reverend Rob Shank. He turned whistleblower. He was on the inside of all this with Hobby Lobby years ago, and now he's become a whistleblower, and so he's giving the New York Times all the details about what they, the conservative activists, were doing in conjunction with members of the U.S. Supreme Court. That's where the story's coming from one of them who is now turned whistleblower. So you can take that for what it's worth. Paul David Henderson, good to have you on, man. We'll do it again soon. All the best to you, sir, and happy holidays.
A pleasure. Thank you so much. Good talking to you, Tavis.
Thank you, sir. More of our program after News, Traffic, and Sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. AAA is predicting this will be the third busiest travel period ever. Spokesperson Robert Sinclair says 54 million people will go 50 miles or more from home this year.
Every major road, I'm sure, will be packed with traffic, particularly after 5 p.m. on Wednesday as commuters and holiday travelers mix together.
Air travel is expected to be up 8% compared to last year, and the number of people taking a cruise is way up. New Twitter owner Elon Musk says he's holding off on restarting the social media platform's paid account verification program. Musk tweeted the program is on hold until the company is confident it can stop impersonators. And that's the latest. I'm Ree Harris on your source for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
In Newhall, got a vehicle stalled on the 5 south of 14. They're trying to get that out of the left-hand lane. In the meantime, watch for delays starting at Lyons Avenue. In Burbank, they're clearing some debris off the 5 northbound for Buena Vista Street. That's in the right-hand lane, but watch for a traffic break. And in Huntington Park, we had a structure fire earlier. The intersection of Slauson Avenue and Soda Street shut down until further notice. In Commerce, we got a crash on the 5 northbound for Garfield Avenue. That's on the right-hand shoulder, but we are seeing some extra slowing on the maps.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers got 30 points off the bench from Norman Powell to beat Utah by 7. Reggie Jackson added 27 points. Paul George sat out the game with a sore hamstring. Kawhi Leonard played only 23 minutes and finished with 8 points. The Lakers take a 3-game winning streak into tonight's game in Phoenix. LeBron James remains questionable with a strained abductor muscle. He has missed the last 4 games. Let's see if Anthony Davis can extend his impressive streak. He's had at least 30 points and 15 rebounds in each of the Lakers' last 3 games. The Rams are worried about quarterback Matthew Stafford being available for Sunday's game in Kansas City. Stafford is dealing with concussion symptoms again. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
KBLA Talk 1580 is pleased to announce a can't-miss community event.
It's a celebration.
Welcome home, Mayor-elect Karen Bass.
Oh my God.
Join us for this free public event as we celebrate Mayor-elect Bass's historic victory. There'll be entertainment, food trucks, and a diverse array of vendors, along with attendance and participation from community leaders, elected officials, celebrities, business owners, and other notables. KBLA Talk 1580 will host Mayor-elect Bass on the main stage as we reflect on the importance of this moment and what it means for the Black community, women, and all Angelinos who believe in the limitless potential of our amazing city. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 and our social media platforms for all the important details. We look forward to celebrating with Mayor-elect Karen Bass and you.
We gon' celebrate your party with you. Come on now. It's a celebration.
Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
We thank Paul David Henderson for unpacking this breaking story. Story broke a day or so ago, but it's an unfolding story. about what's happening inside the U.S. Supreme Court. In case you just tuned in, we now know that there was yet another leak outside or from the U.S. Supreme Court. This particular leak was sent not to the whole country. You recall the leak that most recent was the leak about Roe v. Wade, the pending decision that was coming from the court. That leak came out, but it came out in Politico. And because it was leaked to a news organization, it went everywhere. What makes this story that we're talking about today more unique is that it was leaked to a handful of conservative operatives. They were given insight from the court on where this particular case was headed, what was about to happen, and that information was leaked to a handful of conservative operatives in the country. And the story in the New York Times lays out all that they were able to do and plan and prep for. All the moves they were able to make preemptively because of the information they'd received from this leak from the U.S. Supreme Court. And as we said with Paul David Henderson a moment ago, the wife of Justice Samuel Alito somehow involved in this mess, as was the wife of Clarence Thomas, Jenny Thomas, in the January 6th insurrection. So it's an ugly story. Again, it underscores what many of us have been saying for years, that something is afoot here. Now you have this 6-3 supermajority on the court, and these stories continue to come out about all these leaks, stuff that we suspected was happening, and now we know, in fact, has been happening for years inside the U.S. Supreme Court. If that doesn't trouble you, I don't know what does, again, given especially that they now have a 6-3 majority on the court. But these stories are beyond disturbing. It goes, as I said earlier, to the permeability and to the credibility of the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, that's at the highest level. That is the high court. But as we've been discussing on this program any number of times with Nick Cordelai-Corte, who will join us in just a second, and others, Republicans are also expanding their power in state Supreme Courts. They know where they want to have the fight. They know what their game plan is, and part of their game plan is to accrue as much power as they can in the court system. Because if they can accrue the power they need in the court system, who gets a chance not just to interpret the laws, but essentially to be like Congress and make laws, depending on the decisions they put forth, then they can hold on just a little while longer. So it's not just at the level of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's about what's happening also as our Republicans start to pack state Supreme Courts across the country. To that end, I am pleased to welcome into this conversation KBLA's Chief National Political Affairs Analyst and host of KBLA's Sunday morning program, A More Perfect Union, heard Sundays, as you know, on the 10s. Also news anchor for Fox Soul's Nightly Black Report. His introduction is getting way too long. I got to do something about this. He's taking me 5 minutes to get the introduction out. Nick Cordelai-Corte joins us now to unpack the impact that Republicans are having on state policies as they expand power in state Supreme Courts. And we'll talk about this strange story out of South Carolina about what a school board did, a school board of conservatives who had just been elected, what they did in their first meeting in literally 2 hours. I'll unpack that, or let Nick Cordelai unpack that for you in just a second, but it's going to blow your mind. So a bunch of conservatives get elected to a school board in South Carolina, and in 2 hours, they did the following. We'll unpack that for you in just a second. Nick Cordelai, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Tavis?
I'm well, man. I'm glad to have you on. Always good to hear your voice. And, of course, loving your program every Sunday. More Perfect Union on the 10s here at KBLA. Let me ask you right quick. It's been, a couple months now? How is the Black Report? How are you enjoying your new assignment on Fox Soul?
I'm really enjoying working on the Black Report. I'm enjoying my team at the Black Report. It is a really it's a blessing to be able to take our viewers on a journey across Black America 5 days a week. You know that journey very well because you've done that just about most of your career. And so I feel really blessed to be able to do that, especially in times like this, where there are so many issues that are so important to our communities. So many issues that we actually have a chance to make a difference on. And so I don't take for granted being invited into people's homes and onto their devices 5 days a week. Well, 6 days a week if you include More Perfect Union. But, I'm just trying to do my part.
Yeah, no, you're doing that and then some. Before I go to South Carolina, and again, I guess this entire hour I could frame as the conservative movement in this country and what happens inside the Supreme Court and what happens inside of school board meetings. It's all about these conservatives doing everything they can to hold on to whatever authority and power they have. Before I get to this school board in South Carolina, your thoughts quickly here on these Supreme Courts in states across the country who are essentially doing the same thing that the U.S. Supreme Court is doing, packing the courts with conservative members and pushing the agendas they want to push, never mind what the majority of the people in their states have to say or the country has to say. They're pushing these political agendas that ought to be based and rooted in the law. But again, every time the New York Times or some other political or some other outlet breaks a story like this, we see what's really going on behind the scenes. How do you read it?
Well, I think it just underscores the crisis in our courts writ large. And I think one of the most sort of damning examples we see is coming out of the Supreme Court, where we're seeing evidence of yet another leak, this time from Justice Alito. Between Justice Alito's wife and Clarence Thomas's wife, ain't the spouses of these Supreme Court justices busy?
Yeah.
And busy really downgrading the public trust in an institution that touches every single one of our lives. And so, Dick Durbin, who is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has not minced words. He has called for passage of legislation that's pending in Congress that would create a code of ethics for the Supreme Court, because currently they are not bound by the same ethics that some of the lower courts are. But even with some of the lower courts being bound to that code of ethics, we don't really see them adhering to them. I mean, just look at the Circuit Court, the Fifth Circuit Court, where judges appointed by Donald Trump have essentially thrown cold water on Biden's attempt to offer student debt cancellation to folks that qualify for that, right? And so we're seeing the we're seeing our court system politicized, hyper politicized right before our very eyes. And let's not think that doesn't trickle down to our state Supreme Courts as well. And so right now, conservatives are on a mission to get cases that align with their conservative agenda, to get them routed to the Supreme Court, so that this conservative court, this Clarence Thomas court, I don't even think of it as the Roberts court anymore, the Thomas court, rules their way. And so it is a really great example of the consequences of every single election. Every single election matters. Who sits in that White House, who sits in the Senate, to be able to confirm judges, not just to the Supreme Court, but to the Circuit Court. That matters. Our governors who appoint to the courts as well, that matters. And so, we got to continue to sort of grin and bear it. But unfortunately, I fear that it's going to get worse before it gets better, Tavis.
Yep. So that's at the court level, be it the state court level or at the U.S. Supreme Court level. We see the way conservatives are packing these courts and, again, advancing their own political agendas, say nothing of expanding rights. They're comfortable to shrink rights and to hold on, again, to whatever power they might be controlling. That's inside the court system. One of the other arenas in this country, one of the other areas in this country where they are, conservatives that is, are pushing aggressively is to gain seats on school boards. When we think of politics, we think of the presidency, we think of the Senate, we think of the House, we think of governors and offices that have some sort of these highbrow offices, if I can put it that way. We think of them. What we tend not to think of, and I say we, I mean on the left, progressives, the liberals, what we tend not to think of is the power, the authority, the control that school boards have. But that is exactly one of the levels on which, one of the terrains on which conservatives play, and they are playing aggressively because they know that if they can control school boards across the country, they control the minds of our babies. And so it's not just at the court level, at the high court level, it's at the local level. Tip O'Neill once said that all politics are local. Republicans get that, and at the local level, they are running a serious game of stacking the school board. So here's what happened in South Carolina, and when we come forward, we'll get the Quarter Life Quartet to unpack it for you. But in South Carolina, the Berkeley County School District elected conservatives to run the school board. And in their first meeting, in their very first meeting, they fired the district's first black superintendent. They banned critical race theory. They set up a committee to decide whether certain books and materials should be banned from all the schools and more, all within their first 2-hour meeting. Nicola Corte will unpack that for us when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We don't try to be all things to all people. We just remain true to who we are. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
On Saturday, December 3rd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., come out and enjoy a free community health fair, co-sponsored by Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Health Ministry and the Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. The fair will be held on the church grounds at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, with free health screenings, refreshments, jumpers for the kids, a visit from Santa, entertainment with a DJ, free food giveaway for the first 100 people who attend, as well as raffles and other prizes. There will also be open enrollment, health insurance representatives present. Attendees can get free blood pressure, glucose, HIV and STD testing, a dental screening, fluoride varnish, COVID testing, vaccines and boosters. Flu shots will also be offered. Housing navigation, mental health support, and education services will be available. Don't miss this free community health fair. Tell somebody and receive the gift of preventative health services this season. See you all on Saturday, December 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Los Angeles.
Congratulations to this week's KBLA Talk 1580's Office of the Week, Community Legal Aid SoCal. Advocates for justice in Orange and Los Angeles counties. Congratulations, Community Legal Aid SoCal.
You're the victim of a car accident. Who goes to bat for you is crucial. We're MVP Accident Attorneys, the personal injury pros. Hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. When it comes to getting the maximum compensation you deserve, our team hits it out of the park. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for a free case review. Call 833-MVP-WINS.
Call on me, your MVP.
Sanctuary of Hope invites you to come out, support Homeless Youth Awareness Month at a candlelight, interfaith prayer, and youth voice reflections, Tuesday, November 29th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. For more info, visit thesoh.org. Did you know a housing crisis puts young people at huge risk of more violence and trauma? And right now, young people and their children need support more than ever. Prevention services such as financial assistance, education, employment support, and mental health well-being are main drivers of impact. Contact thesoh.org for more information. Did you know an estimated 4.2 million youth and young adults experience homelessness, of which 700,000 are unaccompanied minors? The pathway to functional zero is prevention. More info at thesoh.org. Again, thesoh.org.
I funked up. My kitchen stinks, now that dinner burnt up. Gross. I funked up. Room smells so bad, she hit me with the breakup. Damn, son. Anyone got Febreze? I funked up. Forgot today was trash day and it stunk up. You can undo those odors, right? Yeah. You just spray. And all the motors go away. With Febreze, yeah, you just spray. And all the problems go away. Rewind.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, Nicola Corte, I teed it up for you. Take it away.
Well, Tavis, first of all, let me just say I talked a little bit about this with National Black Justice Coalition Executive Director David John on a More Perfect Union on Sunday, and I'm feeling just as incensed about this story now as I did on Sunday and as I did earlier in the week last week when I reported on it on Fox Soul's Black Report. This is terribly frightening. And as somebody who started their career working as a field representative for a Los Angeles school board member, I know firsthand the power that school boards have, the power that is bestowed upon them, and to think that this new majority on the school board in Berkeley County, South Carolina, is going to be at the helm. It's frightening. And it's not just about Berkeley County, South Carolina. Moms for Liberty, they endorsed more than 500 school board candidates across the country this year, 49% of whom have won their races. And so, we're talking about candidates, that were successful in states like Florida, that were successful in states like Arkansas and Michigan, and even my home state of California. And so this isn't just something that's happening in some far out place. This is something that's happening in our backyard. And I think, well, what about Black parents? What about the parents of kids with special needs? What about same-sex parents? What about single parents? Moms for Liberty has such a very narrow agenda. And when we say Moms for Liberty, well, which moms? Because I often see white moms out there that have a strong conservative bend, right? And so even just calling themselves Moms for Liberty, I don't think they speak for most mothers out there. What they did, Tavis, was anti-democratic. The fact that these folks on their first day in power, within 2 hours, the school board votes to fire the first Black superintendent. They terminate the district lawyer's contract. They ban critical race theory, and they set up a committee to decide whether certain books and materials should be banned, of which we know a lot of those books are by Black authors.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so, let's not pretend that this group does not have an anti-Black agenda, that they are advancing at stealth speed. That should be frightening to folks. It's anti-democratic, and this is another teachable moment, for all voters out there, for everybody who believes in democracy, for people that believe, in fairness, right? These people aren't playing fair. They don't really care all that much about the democratic process, right? And, they can't convince me otherwise that what they're doing is not intended to be anti-Black.
Yeah, it is head spinning when you consider what Nicola just laid out. They did all of that literally in their first meeting and inside of 2 hours. That's a tsunami of activity. And again, when you're pushing an anti-Black agenda and you can accomplish all that in your first meeting inside of 2 hours, God knows what's going to happen in the weeks and months to come as this board in Berkeley County, South Carolina, continues to meet. But this is why elections matters. Elections matter. There are repercussions and consequences for the people that we elect. But again, I wanted to just put a finer point on this and to draw your attention not just to the high court and what conservatives are doing in state courts, but what they're doing at the local level, advancing these agendas inside school boards. Our remaining moments with Nicola Corte when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
I find it important to be here as a business owner and entrepreneur because I want some more capital and I'm not really a fan of loans. So it's really interesting to see how people have gained wealth and what different spaces to advance my money in, whether it be stocks, digital.
And why do you think it's important for a company like Chase to promote building generational wealth in Black and brown communities?
I mean, it's important to me as one of the biggest banks in the world to promote Black wealth because most banks don't really, in my opinion, care about the money that I'm spending as they would opposed to a white counterpart that might have the same dollar amount in their accounts.
Well, you can bet on Chase offering insights on financial health, the path to home ownership, and entrepreneurship. It's the Chase Advancing Black Wealth Tour.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Come on, we're going to be late to the cookout.
I was just packing up my famous mac and cheese.
I hope you packed the Pepto, too.
Huh?
Pepto-Bismol provides fast relief from heartburn and indigestion. You know, that uncomfortable feeling after you eat too much. And after the deviled eggs, baked beans, and barbecue ribs, you're going to need it.
Barbecue ribs? I should probably pack an extra shirt, too.
Good call.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto-Bismol. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
We can always expect, and I certainly appreciate the fact that Dr. Nee Quarterly-Corte tracks these kinds of issues every Sunday on A More Perfect Union, heard exclusively on this station on the 10s. We are delighted and honored to have him as our chief national political affairs analyst, and oftentimes throughout the day, I will get a text message or an email from Nee Quarterly-Corte just making sure that I'm aware of what's happening, making sure that I'm aware of something that just broke, making sure that I'm aware of things that ought to be on my document. All the things that I'm doing, all the things that he's doing, he still makes it his business to make sure that I'm in the loop on things that matter and that ought to be discussed on this station. And so we thank him for bringing this story certainly to my attention about what's happening at the school board in Berkeley County, South Carolina. That said, I look forward to hearing your show this Sunday. As always, Nee Quarterly, let me close by asking you what we can expect. What are you reporting on today on the Black Report on Fox Soul?
Well, this week we're actually on hiatus. We're enjoying a little bit of a holiday hiatus this week. But we are going to be coming back next Monday, and we're going to be going strong until the Christmas holiday. And so we've got some really, great interviews that we're lining up for you. I don't want to tip my hand too much, but there's a really big interview that we're working on right now that folks are going to hear a lot about. And so stay tuned. Keep your ear to KBLA Talk 1580 and keep watching Fox Soul's Black Report. We're cooking up some really special stuff for you.
No, I appreciate it. Good to have you on our program today. Thanks for bringing these stories to us. We always appreciate your insights. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of the day and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you too, Tavis.
Good to have you on.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. 2 more hours to go here on Tavis Smiley. In our next hour, we'll talk to Cheryl Crazy Bull as we continue to pay respect, of course, to Native American Indian Heritage Month. We'll talk to her. She's the president and CEO of the American Indian College Fund. Have a conversation with her about the ways in which this community is still being marginalized, the ways in which they are still being rendered invisible, and what ought to be done about the representation of Native people in this country. You've heard me say many times that slavery was not America's first sin. It was not America's original sin. What we did to the natives was our first crime, our first sin. So we'll talk about that and more in hour 2 as we celebrate Native American Indian Heritage Month. And then our third and final hour today, a conversation with Grammy Award-winning artist Regina Belle. First time in her career, 35 years plus. She's never put out a holiday album, but it is that time of the year when artists who've never done that before release their Christmas albums, and I look forward to a conversation with Regina Belle in hour 3 today. This is Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm